Welcome to Gutsy Talks. I'm Rachel Larson, your host, naturopath, and nutritionist, and I'm here to have real, honest conversations that can help you heal your gut, calm your mind, and fall back in love with food. Together with leading health experts, we'll dive into all things gut health and explore the deep connections between your gut and overall well-being, so you can feel empowered to take control of your health and live your best life. If you love all things gut health, follow me for more on Instagram at rachel.larson or head to rachellarson.com.au. Now, let's get into today's episode. Today's guest is a true powerhouse in the world of mold and mycotoxin recovery, Dr. Jill Crista. She's a pioneering naturopathic doctor, best-selling author, and devoted educator who's helped thousands reclaim their health from mold-related illness. Her mission? To elevate the well-being of the planet by assisting in the healing of her inhabitants. And today she's here to reveal the crucial truths about mold, the stealthy, often overlooked threat that could completely change the way you think about your health. Welcome, Dr. Jill, to the Gutsy Talks. I am beyond excited to have you here.
Thank you. It is a treat.
Oh, look, like I was saying to you just before we hit record, that you really are one of the goats when it comes to mold illness, mycotoxins, and it's just such an important area, which clearly, like, you know how important it is and how it affects our patients' health and how people's health. But if anybody hasn't heard of you, hasn't heard of mold illness, we're going to get into that. But I want them to understand how and why you got into this field of mold-related illness.
Well, I started in the Lyme world. I found myself in southern Wisconsin that had a lot of cases of Lyme disease. And I thought, whoa, I better get trained in that. So I went and did their physician training. And kind of once you do that, you kind of get known as like someone who can help with Lyme.
Yep.
And then there was this group of it's amazing when you find and treat the cause. It's foundational functional medicine there is like, oh, you find the cause, you treat the cause, people get better. It did work that way for the majority of my patients, but not for this small subset of patients. And in one of those patients, they found toxic mold in a remodel of their basement.
Yeah.
And it was one of those slow drip kind of things that had been going on that they estimated since they remodeled 10 to 12 years prior.
Yeah, wow.
A long time. And granted, it was the basement. People didn't spend that much time there, that kind of thing. But I started thinking, well, I wonder if this is why his Lyme isn't getting better. And started hitting PubMed and researching and found a bunch of animal research. And the more I dug, the more I found, and the more I realized, oh my goodness, I am missing mold.
Yes.
And that's why I named the course. I have a practitioner training course, which you know because you've taken.
Yes.
That is, it's called Are You Missing Mold? Because that was my big aha. The Pandora's box was just opened. And so then I became a mold specialist by proxy of Lyme, because here I was working with all these, we'll say in air quotes, chronic Lyme patients that actually they didn't have Lyme disease as much as they had mold-related illness. And when we treated the mold, suddenly their Lyme could get better, even for those people who are too sensitive for treatment.
Isn't that incredible?
Yeah.
I mean, our patients are always telling us where we need to learn. And especially if you're finding, because clinical work is patterns a lot of the time. You're seeing the patterns and you're seeing like kind of the things that you're missing. And for that to be, I guess, the missing part of people's health makes so much sense, which we'll dive into because, again, mold, I don't think people take it seriously enough. Like they see mold in their toothbrush and they're like, it's just mold. And for some people, it could be just mold, but for other people, that is the end. It's the beginning of the end for them. So let's talk about really just define like what is mold illness. There's also, I guess, the word CIRS or chronic inflammatory response syndrome that gets kind of thrown around. So can you just kind of define those for people?
Yeah. So I like to put mold-related illness as the top umbrella term.
Yep.
And then things like CIRS or chronic inflammatory response syndrome goes underneath there. Mycotoxicosis goes under there. Mold allergy goes under there. So we have a lot of ways that mold can make someone sick. And not every mold is the same. And that's where it gets really complicated. So mold can make you sick with the mold spores, with spores that have died and broken apart. So they're called fragments. With the regular chemicals that mold metabolizes and spits out when it's just living and eating. And I jokingly call these mold farts because it's just metabolic.
Yeah.
Kind of what they are. And then there are the purposefully made toxins called mycotoxins that mold will make when it's in a competitive environment. So it might be
Mm.
another mold spore is there and it wants to hold its territory. Could be bacteria are there and it's spitting these chemicals out. These mycotoxins are really energetically taxing for mold to make, so it doesn't always make them. But
Yep.
if you're seeing mycotoxins, you know there's mold and more than just one mold species in that problem environment.
Yes.
And then a damp environment can also have bacteria and bacterial toxins. So you've got all these possibilities. And I sat down and I did the math problem one time because I was like, why are we missing mold so often? Because it is a multi-system, it can cause almost any symptom in the body. So there's the problem. But I started thinking about, wow, I wonder how many variations of a damp building there could be. And I sat down and did the math, and it's over 15 million possibilities.
I was going to be like, how did you come up with that number? But I mean, I guess like you did it, you did the math. That
I
is a
did.
lot of variation to work with.
I know. So when somebody says, well, I didn't get that sick from my moldy building, it's like, well, we're talking about two different things, actually,
Yeah.
because it totally depends on what's the mix of the mold.
Mm.
It depends on whether the mold is eating or dormant.
Yep.
It depends on if it's been broken up into fragments. That's going to cause more allergy. It depends on if it's trying to compete. It'll make more mycotoxins. Which mold is it? Because each one spits out a different toxin. And so that's been like I am obsessed with mold. So that's an easy thing to see, I'm sure.
And do you know what? We need you in this field being obsessed with mold because there's clearly a lot of stuff going on.
There's so much going on. So I sat down and I was like, okay, how we're making this assumption that in order to get rid of the mycotoxins, because that is something that our bodies can take on and accumulate, and we can, dive more into that. Not every mycotoxin even uses the same route to get out of the body. So to
Yeah.
put everybody on a binder is going to miss like 80% of the mycotoxins.
So let's talk about mycotoxins then. So per like mold spore, how many toxins are we making? Like how, yeah, let's talk about it. I mean, what do we need to know about mycotoxins?
Yeah, I wish we knew that number. We
Mm.
don't have any kind of that's a big blind spot in the
Mm.
whole indoor air inspector profession.
Yeah.
Very few of them are paying attention to mycotoxins.
Mm.
Even fewer are actually testing for them. So a
Yeah.
lot of people are on their own, having to test their own dust in their own building or their furnace filter or their mini split or whatever to see if there are mycotoxins there because the indoor environmental profession has not embraced it yet. And the reason for that, neither has the medical profession, and that's
Yeah.
because we don't have the human studies.
Yeah.
And now in the building environment, they could start testing that, getting those studies because the buildings, you don't have to take a skin sample or a lung
Yes.
sample, nose sample, you can take a sample of the building, you just take the
Yes.
dust. But in a human, they're a little harder to find because they can soak into our fat soluble or oily parts of our body
Mm.
and they can accumulate and hide there. And it's harder to find them in a person.
Yeah.
But the reason we don't have the human studies is that we've already known them and tagged them, identified these things as human carcinogens, which means they can cause cancer.
Mm.
So then medical ethics does not allow us to create research studies where we say, hey, by the way, we're going to expose you to a known
Yeah.
carcinogen, something we know causes cancer. We're going to treat half of you with what we think works, but we're not sure. And we're not going to treat the other half of you. We can't do it. We can't do that study. So
Yeah.
that's one of the things when I start to explain to fellow doctors, when they kind of get on my case about, well, where's the controlled trial for what you're doing? I'm like, we, if you think about this now for just 2 seconds,
Yeah.
we can't do that study.
Yeah.
It's not even ethically okay or morally okay to say, hey, wait, we're going to poison you and then not treat part of you.
Yeah.
Because
Fingers crossed. Yeah.
yeah, right. Which side of the coin flip are you going to be on? Well, we'll see, luck of
Oh
the draw.
God.
Yeah. So we just don't have those studies. And when I explain that when I train a lot of doctors. And so
Mm.
when I explain that, then it's like the light bulb goes off of like, oh, right. We're not going to have those studies. Although with Dr. Neil Nathan and I, we have devised a plan to figure this out.
Ooh.
Because yes, we found out that the masks that remediators use, their respirators,
Yep.
they don't block mycotoxins from coming through. So they
Wow.
are actually being exposed on a daily basis. So
Wow.
that's where we're thinking well, these are already like voluntary subjects
Yeah.
in a way, they don't know it. And how wonderful if we can find out things that we could give them that would protect them from that daily exposure. Because animal studies do have some things that they talk about, like fish oil, DHA,
Yep.
quercetin. You know, there are things that you can take ahead of time, milk thistle, that will actually protect your tissues from taking on those toxins. So if we could be protecting all these remediators, it would be like I would just be so heart happy if we
I
could do
mean,
that.
it sounds like they would be as well because they're probably thinking that they're doing the right thing and unfortunately exposing themselves. So,
Right.
what a terrible but wonderful loophole that like there's this opportunity to help them helping others.
Right.
I love that. And I guess like it's interesting because when we spoke about, or well, when you spoke about all the different types of mold that could be people exposed to, are there factors within an individual, not just the mold or that they're exposed to, that means that they become affected or not?
The biggest in the research that we've done so far, which we have yet to publish, but the biggest fact is previous exposure to a damp or water damaged building.
Hmm.
Made even worse if that person was exposed as a child,
Right.
and made even worse if that person was exposed in mom's belly. So if mom was exposed when pregnant, then that person is almost like they are wired for being an extremely mold sensitive person.
Interesting.
So there's also things like you can hear in a lot of the zeitgeist in mold that there are genetics, but the largest thing that is going to determine that is your previous exposure, previous and current exposure. So if you have a current exposure, if you've been exposed before, that is the biggest determinant to having an early and more difficult reaction to that exposure. Now, there's also like nutritional deficiencies that lead someone to be more susceptible.
Mm.
There, which mold is it? How close are you to the mold? So there's those factors. And then again, with the genetic conversation, a lot of times you'll hear people say, well, 25% of all people are sensitive to mold. And that's based on, I think, one study that shows an HLA pattern
Hmm.
that gives someone a pattern of not being able to tag or target mycotoxins and get them out of the body.
Yeah.
But I have found actually that the bigger genetics that make the difference are people who have trouble detoxifying. So
Yeah.
the biggest one being glucuronidation. So if they have a GST SNP, methylation issues, sulfation issues, these are the people that tend to have a slower reaction to the mold.
Mm.
So they don't get that alarm that says get out. So they're going
Yep.
to stay in it a little longer. And then it takes a little longer for them to get better just
Mm.
to because their body is not detoxifying as cleanly. But we
Yep.
have found a back way to get that done by using the kidneys.
Yes.
So
I
we
remember in
just
your course, the kidneys, I was like, why haven't I paid enough attention to kidneys?
yeah.
Like it was like I was like these organs that do so much all the time for us. And I'm
I
like, damn,
know.
they're cool.
Yeah, they're super cool. They're also really complex. I think we get enamored by the liver because it's like this, phase zero, phase one, phase two, phase
Yeah.
three, that
Yeah.
kind of thing. And it's so clean. And then there's like, we know so well liver metabolism because pharma has done all this study. So we
Yeah.
know like certain phase one things will be turned up or turned down, that kind of thing. But they're all ignoring the kidneys.
Yeah.
So, I think that, to maximize or like double someone's detox power by bypassing the liver altogether makes total sense to me because we have two kidneys and only one liver, so we can do
Makes
double.
makes sense to bring on more if when obviously appropriate. And we'll get to all of that because
Yes, yes.
obviously treatment is it's another thing that we need to get through. But when someone is
Yeah.
exposed to mycotoxins, so what exactly is happening in their body? Again, knowing that you've just said that there are so many different types of molds and mycotoxins out there, like in a general sense, what is happening in their body?
So we know a lot about the mycotoxins. Even like where they go in the body, where they have an affinity for
Hmm.
what they're doing in there. Sometimes you're actually making the mycotoxins in your own body because the spores have moved into your respiratory passages. So
Oh, damn.
sometimes even those mycotoxins are from you because you've
Mm,
had that exposure.
mm,
Um, but we know each one has kind of their own unique thing that they do because they're molecularly different. But what they all do together is max out the immune system.
Yep.
They deplete mitochondria, which means that they are going to cause fatigue and slowing down of every single cell in every part of your body. So they slow down how quick your brain can work, how well your eyes can adjust to light changes, to reading across
Mm,
a page. You know, a lot of people describe a lot of vision problems. If
yep.
you think about that, like brain, eyes, heart are
Yep.
probably our hardest working areas that
Yep.
you're going to notice a difference when it's not working, you know. So we see immune depletion, mitochondrial dysfunction, we see like toxicity to cells. So again, some are more toxic to certain cells than others.
Yep.
We see that they can cause birth defects, cancer, just the normal metabolism of a cell
Yep.
that they can get in the way of. They're toxic to pretty much everything that they come in contact with. And that's why our body wants to pillow them up in fat so that then we have like this pillow of protection
Yes.
that sort of, you know, keeps them from bumping into tissues and causing harm.
Yeah, I mean, it that
Yeah.
totally makes sense from a protective mechanism. And what you were just explaining there also explains why, and I've always heard of mold as a multi-system, multi-symptom presentation. And I guess like, can you explain that for people when they're thinking, well, do I have mold? Like yeah, like I get headaches and I feel sluggish. So like what do people look for? And I know this is potentially hard to answer because what we're saying is that
Right.
it's kind of everything. So how do people kind of start
Right.
understanding what it looks like?
Yeah, it kind of looks more like a cluster of many instead of
Hmm.
a single thing. There
Yeah.
are some keynote symptoms that I would, when I hear that I'm like, ooh, mold is already on my differential.
Hmm.
So vision changes. So if somebody says that my vision changes all the time, sometimes it works, but then, or it's really bad when I wake up in the morning. That's probably because they're sleeping near mold. And then it gets better throughout the day. Or, so if the vision is changing throughout the day, that's not just you being tired. Like
Yeah.
tired people get tired eyes, but the eyes still work.
Yes.
Um, so vision changes throughout the day. That's a biggie. Ear ringing is a
Yep.
biggie.
Yep.
Urinary frequency, that's a biggie. And the reason for that is that our smart body says, hey, we've got toxins running around in our blood. Urine is a filtrate of blood.
Yep.
Let's just dump all these toxins through the kidneys because it's very efficient and we'll get rid of them. So a lot of times people will have like constant thirst, constant urinary frequency, no infection, no bladder infection.
Yep.
And that's one of the things that mold does. Also pelvic pain. So while they're
Mm.
sitting in the bladder, these mycotoxins can migrate into the nerves of that area,
Yep.
and they're neurotoxic. That's one of the things I should have said in all of them. Immune toxic, neurotoxic. So they'll just start pinging those nerves. That's what ear ringing is too, is we breathe them in and they accumulate in that area and they
Yep.
just start pinging the ear. Ping, 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 ping. That's ear ringing.
Wow.
Same thing happens around the bladder because that's where we're excreting a bunch of them. So you can get pelvic pain, prostatitis, this kind of stuff that has vulvar pain, all these things that is just because it's accumulating the toxins and it's pinging those nerves constantly. Isn't that wild? So if I see
Yeah,
that, I'm like, we need to go test your house and we need to test your nose to see if
definitely.
you are a moldy building.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, look, and that's, for people that are listening to this, like, because not everybody has mold, but there's going to be people like this that are thinking, like, oh, wow, like I've
Yeah.
been suffering with these issues, like nothing seems to be helping, or hang on, like I ticked a couple of those that they were mentioning, like, this
Mhm.
is what we're talking about, the missing link of why, like, this chronic picture just doesn't seem to ever go away, regardless of what you're trying. So, my clinic is more gut focused. What is the link between mold, mycotoxin exposure, gut, the risk of different infections? Like, what's that link?
Yeah. Actually, I should have said on that list,
Mm,
anxiousness and also gut peristalsis issues, so motility issues in the gut.
yep.
And one of the reasons is another efficient way to get rid of these from the body, even if you're not eating mycotoxins, if you're breathing them in, they go to the bloodstream, the body is like, yes, send most of this to the kidneys, any residual, and then certain ones get metabolized by our microbiome really well. So the
Mm,
body will start to push from the blood into the gut. so that the
Yeah,
microbiome can degrade them and make them less toxic, which is wild to think about, you know, that you're
definitely.
like smelling them in, or they can go through your skin because they're fat soluble. And then they
Yeah.
get to the blood, body's like, and the majority of the kidneys send a bunch of these guys to the gut, push it through the opposite way that nutrients usually go. So
Yes.
nutrients go from the core of the gut to the bloodstream. These toxins are going from the bloodstream into the gut.
Yeah.
And as they're doing that, they can, because they're nerve toxic, they can impair the normal motility of a gut.
Mm,
So what happens with that? Then that's where you get the SIBOs. That's where you
yes.
get the, if you don't have the constant squeeze, these migrating motor complexes that just kind of like squeeze the tube from top to bottom,
Yeah.
then normal bacteria that should be there in certain places can migrate up the tube where they're not supposed to go and cause infection. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's something with all my SIBO patients that like I'm screening for, especially because, motility and peristalsis and all those kind of nerve related movements in the gut, that's just, it's one of the biggest things that we find as a risk factor for SIBO. Also, for people that have, I guess, any issue related to motility, the big question is why is motility affected? Yeah.
Mhm.
And like we're saying, it can be quite a stealthy and hard to find issue like mold that I guess if we're looking properly, we can find it. So,
Yeah.
what about yeast and fungal infections and mold? Talk to me about that.
Yes. So what happens is that the mold can try to move into your respiratory passages and does a very good job of that, actually. It's one of the best evaders of our
Mhm.
immune system. And so basically the body starts to just take on a fungal burden, and
Mhm.
then fungus starts to win, so to speak. Then what they do is they start to make these mycotoxins right on the surface
Yeah.
so that they create this little zone of sterility so that they can grow. And a
Wow.
lot of mycotoxins, like gliotoxin, it's made to kind of clear the area of any kind of microbes so that species of mold can propagate. So then you basically get like all the fungus is like, we're winning, so they
Yeah.
come out of balance, and you can get like candida jumping on. I kind of think of candida like the small dog bouncing around the big dog, like, hey, Spike,
Yes.
we're doing it, aren't we? Like, so if you
Just
have had
excited to be there.
exactly like, oh yeah, so if you have had, and I don't mean to make light because
No.
chronic candida can be, ugh. So if you've tried to fight it off and you've tried to rebalance a candida overgrowth problem and you're not getting anywhere, there's a smarter fungus behind that candida.
Yep. Yep.
Always, I would say. Like I can't tell you how many times that I'll find rhodotorula, candida, all these things, and we put them on. Not everything that's good for yeast will kill the mold spores because
Yep.
mold is one level up in intelligence.
Hmm.
Um, and so we might have done like undecyclinic acid or monolaurin, and in a normal candida that can clear it out. That's not going to touch mold.
Yep.
So we need to use certain treatments that are going to get at the spores.
And I
Yeah.
think that for people, because I've got a couple of patients right now who I'm like, I reckon there's mold there because the candida and antifungal treatment, we're just pushing shit uphill, for lack of a better phrase. It's just
Right.
like, gosh, what's happening? And there's like the progress is just it's minimal considering the effort, or there's the sensitivity there. And the history of this patient, one in particular I'm thinking of, there is known mold exposure. And so, like, to be like, it's not that the treatments aren't working, they're not working, but like they should be working, but it's because there's this other thing in place. And I think that like people don't feel gaslit, being like there's something else there. Because I think people are like, well, if it's candida and if the antifungals aren't working, am I crazy? What's happening? Why can't, whereas
Right.
it's like there's just something else that we need to be working with. And I hope people listening to that, I hope that's an aha moment for them because I think that would be really important for them to bring up with their practitioner to be like, do we need to look at mold? Been on antifungals for a
Absolutely.
year. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, that fungus can be quite tenacious.
Yeah.
Um, but we're also creating a lot of resistant species. We're
Yeah.
spraying antifungals on all of our food, not all of our food, but the wet food. So like corn, wheat, soy, a lot of these things that in storage can get quite moldy,
Mm,
they're getting a dose of antifungals. So what survives? The resistant
yeah.
species.
Ah,
So
yep.
that comes into our homes. Our paint is getting laced with antifungals to prevent mold growth on paint.
Yep.
So, we're just creating these resistant species with our practices.
Mm,
And that is a huge problem with fungus, because yeah, if you're listening to this and you're like, yeah, my doctor's had me on antifungals for a year, they probably are, maybe it's not candida,
yeah.
but then you do the test and you get it again and it's like, hmm. So I just
Yeah.
did a video that's like, we need to understand the difference between fungal persistence and fungal resistance. Either
Mm,
way, antifungals are still needed, but you might, if it's persistence, which is what I commonly see with resistance, they're being undertreated, especially in
yeah.
the herbal world. A lot of people are like, oh, one capsule twice a day.
Yes.
No, 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 no.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, herbs, think of them like food. And so you really need to be taking them like 4 times a day to keep the blood plasma levels where we need them.
Yeah.
And most people are sort of like tossed in like a drug. They're not strong like drugs. They're
Mm,
effective like drugs, but they're used frequently enough. So that's the fungal persistence part, is that people are, or maybe they're given like, I don't know, like 1 week of itraconazole
yeah.
and then done. And it's
Yeah.
like, that's not really, when it's a long-term daily exposure and they're very colonized, that's not going to touch it. So
Yeah.
they may need to be on treatment a long time, but they should be feeling better.
Yes.
So if you haven't gotten to the point where you feel like you've gotten over the hump or you've moved the needle or whatever analogy we want to
Yeah.
say, if you haven't gotten, that's fungal persistence and we need to be stronger about how we're treating.
Hmm.
But if you have gotten there and you're like, every time I try to get off my stuff though, everything comes back. That's
Yes.
fungal resistance. And then we do biofilm busting to get rid of those guys because that means they're hiding behind, they figured out how to like, hijack all your minerals and proteins to make a little hideout for themselves,
Which is like a testament to
which
them.
I know,
It's just
no,
infuriating. But no, for the general
I know.
person, yeah, like we're just like, how cool are they? But gosh, that's annoying. But I think that, and that's a really
Exactly.
great, like thinking about it is resistance and persistence, also great definition as well. And I know in Australia, um, generally speaking, like it is hard to find practitioners, not from a naturopathic sense, but ones that can prescribe the pharmaceutical antifungals for that duration, for that period of time. Because most of my patients, they might get 1 or 2 rounds of fluconazole or something like that. And then they'll be like, that should be enough, that should be done. So it's sometimes even a case of access to treatment and finding the right practitioner, which can just be a major issue in getting better. So if anyone out there is like, I'm trying, just so you know, like this is a common experience, unfortunately, at least in Australia. Yeah, US could be different, but definitely here can be a bit hard.
No, it's very much the same. Yeah.
Okay, so we're all suffering. Cool. So let's
Yeah.
talk about this and let's talk about the environment because, we've spoken about water damaged buildings. You've kind of mentioned that it's not always buildings that are sources of mold because it can be CPAP machines and a few things like that. So I guess like what is considered a water damaged building? Because again, and this is where we're needing to break down people's current thoughts and biases that buildings that are water damaged are smelly, physically and visibly like deteriorated, and they're like there's like black mold, like it isn't always that obvious. So can we please explain like what a water damaged building is?
Yes, I would be happy to because that is something I've noticed in Australia and in the UK too. There's a normalization of this term damp. Oh,
Mm,
it's just a damp build. Oh, it's dampness. And it's like,
yes.
What?
That's never
Like
good. Yeah.
that's not good. And it's not innocuous,
Yeah.
this idea that, oh, it's just taken on a little bit of damp. Well, damp is what grows mold.
Yeah.
If you want to be a good mold farmer, you need to feed and water it.
Mm,
So the food is in your house. We bring in these previously living organic materials to build our homes with. And then all you need to do is water it. Well, how much water does it take to grow mold? Many mold species can start to grow at a level of humidity of 50% or higher. So as low
mm,
as 50%. So, a lot of times when I've talked to inspectors, that are, you know, trying to not find mold for their insurance company,
yes.
They will
Gosh.
say, oh, this is just a damp area. And I was like, here's the studies.
Yeah.
Here's the studies. 50% or more. So if they're calling an area of 60% to 70% dampness,
Mm,
that's mold growth potential. So we have
yeah.
to start thinking of, I would love to start changing it from water damaged building to moisture damaged building,
I think
because
that, yep.
humidity can, if you have enough of the right things, like if you're storing things in cardboard and you have it right on a cement slab. I just heard John Banton, his new book, Mold Controlled. It's a great book. He gives the statistic that your any cement slab, and this is the average. So if it's a really high water table, it's going to be higher than this.
Yep.
Will emit a 1,000 square foot slab will emit 3 gallons of water over 24 hours.
Yeah, wow. That's a lot of water
That's a lot of water.
all the time.
It's all the time, day after day, day after day. So if you have this luxury vinyl flooring that has a cork underneath so it doesn't go tink, tink, tink every time you step on it,
Yep.
that cork is beautiful food for mold. I can't tell you how many cork-based floorings have made my patients sick. And they
Yeah.
just put it right on slab and they put the
Yep.
cork down because it takes away that tinny
Sound.
sound. It makes it more like wood and whatever. If you're storing cardboard boxes, so you have all your keepsakes and things in a cardboard box and you put it in your basement on the cement slab, that's great conditions. You don't even have to have a flood and you could
Mm,
be growing from those things.
and
So that's, which is also terrifying.
totally, totally terrifying. I think what you said about changing it from water damage to moisture affected or moisture damage, whatever the term was that you said, that makes so much sense because water damage people assume flooding. Like, they assume it has to have had torrential downfall, flooding from internal, a pipe has burst, and you can see water coming down your
Right.
wall. And this is kind of why, again, people are like, it's not in my house, is because they haven't necessarily had that big event. Whereas what you're saying is the humidity and all of those things and the moisture content. It makes a lot more sense. It makes people think, well, yeah, I might be affected by it. No, I haven't had a burst pipe, but I live in a humid climate. I can see damp rising on the outside of the building. Like something's going on here. I want that to happen as well. That would be a great name change.
Yes, I think it would be very beneficial to the whole industry. We could like
Yeah.
get rid of the word water.
Yes. Yeah. It's too polarizing in terms of what people are then considering. What
Yeah.
is, I guess, when is mold remediation? When do we need to start considering it? And I guess I should probably, maybe that I've asked that question too soon because we haven't even spoken about testing to then even consider like when to. So maybe we should go to testing about the home because, and what you mentioned about different mold inspectors for insurance companies. My sister years ago was a part of the Brisbane flooding episode, and they didn't have water up issues. They just had the vast level of rain affecting their house because their roof wasn't it wasn't great. And the inspector for the insurance company was pretty adamant there's not much mold. And then they were like, because I'm the sister, so I'm like, nope, let's get another, I really advocate you get a building biologist. And this
Right.
building biologist just tore shreds through that initial report. Like he was just like, this is an issue, this is an issue, this is an issue. And it has ended up being like almost a full renovation to actually address the degree of mold and because there was visible mold but there was also behind the walls. But I think for people listening to that, don't like if your gut's telling you there's something wrong, get a second opinion. So I guess like
Mhm.
who should we be asking for house inspections and testing? What are they testing for as well?
I'm a little bit dangerous. I know enough to be dangerous with some building stuff because I'm not a building expert.
Sure.
There are people that their whole life's work is to figure this out because buildings
Yep.
are as unique as bodies.
Yep.
And they can be as difficult to find all of the mold as, we have that trouble finding what's wrong in a body. That's why it's kind of cool that we have mold dogs now that, they can be brought in when a reasonable inspector has given it all, a reasonable remediation has been done. I do worry about the animals. I'm like, let's just call them in when we We
Yeah,
don't have
yeah,
something, you know?
yeah, yeah,
Um, and then bring them in and they're finding mold, hidden mold in places that even people who've done this their entire life's work are missing. So, and also I think it's really important, like a little bit of mold. Some people may be able to tolerate that for
yeah,
a longer period of time than others,
yeah,
but nobody should be living with, a significant amount of mold in their home,
yeah,
whether it's quote dormant mold or behind building material. And so they'll say, oh, it's behind the shower, it's fine. You don't want to tear all that out. It's going to be expensive. We've taken care of the leak. It'll dry and die now.
yeah,
Well, then you get a Brisbane flooding event, and
yeah,
all of that old mold that has been laying there dormant wakes back up again and starts growing. So any amount needs to be taken out,
yeah.
That's it. It's just ugh. So as far as inspectors, I think I know in Australia you have like one really good inspector for the entire country.
He's probably very booked out.
Uh-huh.
But that's
Yeah,
terrible, like
I know.
that's a
I
terrible
mean,
thing to say.
I love her. She's just like a bulldog. She's so good at finding mold. But yeah, I mean, it's like we just need more.
Yes.
Most of them are trained by an industry that is funded by insurance companies that
Okay, there's
is
the issue.
saying to the industry, don't pay attention to those mycotoxins. We don't have any human research that can't do da 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 da.
Yeah.
And they're trained to walk into an environment, put an air sucker vacuum in the middle of the room, up away from the carpet, which is kind of crazy because mold especially the more toxic ones, are very gooey, sticky, and heavy and don't like to be
Mm,
airborne.
mm,
So it's as if somebody said, how can we design a test to make sure we never find mold?
totally.
And
That's
then that's
crazy.
the test we're going to use for all of our landlords, our occupational, our, everything. Now, that air test might be okay to use in a post remediation to see if there's any particulate in the air,
Yep.
because post remediation should be clean, 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 clean.
Yep.
But that is not a good diagnostic for determining whether a space is moldy or not, because
Yeah.
it's the snapshot in time. Someone may have, not walked through on the moldy carpet and kicked up any of the mold for
Yep.
hours. And
Yep.
so you're basically, taking this thing as feet off the ground, vacuuming up air for 2 to 5 minutes, depending on the company,
Yep.
and walking out and saying, okay, yep, we're good. Didn't use the number one tool that every inspector should be using, which is their eyeballs.
Yep.
So any good inspector, if you call for like let's say a 2,500 square foot house,
Mm-hmm.
should take them anywhere from 3 to 4 hours to get through.
Mm. Yep. That's a
So
good
that
that's a
idea
good
of,
ballpark for people in terms of
yeah,
time. If it's too quick, you're not doing a thorough enough job.
no. And if they didn't walk in and use their number one tool, which is eyeballs.
Yep.
So they should have their eyeballs on every water generating part of your house, which means under every sink, the floor below that sink, every toilet, every shower, every anything, if
Mm.
there's water coming to your refrigerator, not just the flooring, but the flooring below that or the floor below that.
Yeah.
So, and you should be going around with a flashlight and just tangentially lighting everything and taking a look to see if there's any kind of, it's fluorescing dust is
Mm.
aspergillus.
Yeah.
So let's see that. Sometimes I'll even do that, like when I go stay at an Airbnb or a VRBO or whatever. If I'm lucky, I can do a quick tour and I'll go in with my flashlight
Yeah.
and just shine on the sides of the cabinets or the sides of big bookshelves and things like that, especially on the top of books. Just shine across. And if it fluoresces, I'm like, "Ooh, nope,
Don't
not
like
there.
this. Yeah,
Nope."
wow. Fair enough. I mean, you can't know what you know and be like, I'm just going to ignore it. But that was like,
I know.
and it makes sense in terms of like, particularly just the conflict of interest that is the insurance and the inspection about like why third party testing. And like, yes, that's an additional cost, but it is, we're talking about your health and the health of your family or whoever's living in that home. And
Mhm.
again, it's a testament to my sisters to be like, there is no way my house isn't moldy. Like it is. So like to go and get that additional, professional. And, I know it was like Didn't use that, the number one lady in Australia, but it definitely did a good enough job to get a
Good.
better remediation and have insurance cover it because they could say, no, we've tested it actually, and these are the results. That test that you did was
Yes.
just BS, really.
Right. And that's, in my book, I talk about doing your own mycotoxin dust test. So you
Hmm.
can get kind of like just a read on your place. But that doesn't tell you where the problem is. It doesn't tell you if this is a problem that, was a problem in the house and they remediated, kind of good enough. And
Yeah.
so it's forensic evidence, or if it's a now problem, like
Yeah.
it doesn't tell you a lot of things. So you still do need that inspector.
Yeah.
But that having the inspector is wonderful, like you said, also for being an independent third party. They can sign the chain of custody. They can be the person that says, I will be on a court stand that says that this sample came from this house.
Yes.
Because I do give the insurance companies a little bit of grace because you've heard these stories of there's someone in our area that the couple wanted to remodel their kitchen.
Hmm.
So they read on the highest like kitchen damage reports, insurance, blah, 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 found out it was the refrigerator line getting little pinhole pricks. So they pricked a pinhole in the refrigerator line so that they could have a
Oh,
flood. I mean, come on,
yeah.
people. They're ruining it for all of us because no one would ask for that. Like most of
No.
the time, if somebody is mold sick, that that pinhole prick has been very slowly dripping.
Yeah.
Only when someone gets ice out and it's long standing and it's hidden mold and everybody's sick. So I can understand from the insurance
For
industry,
sure.
they need to be careful,
Yeah.
but it has swung way too far the other way. And,
Yes.
you know, even a little bit of mold is flaring, somebody give me a break. That can't be making them sick, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
For some people, yeah, even a little bit of mold
I mean,
can keep.
and that's what you've spoken about. You've spoken about, what's happened to that individual in terms of previous exposure. We've spoken about the degree, the length, the type of mold. Like, so you're right. There's many reasons why people would be like, mold not an issue, and then some people are like 100% it is. So talking about the house in terms of remediation, cleaning, those types of things, I know a lot of people, when they see mold, attempted to get out the clove oil and the vinegar. And then there's obviously the huge overhaul remediation. So I guess like how do we start to clean a space that is mold affected?
Well, even on the inspection side, if it's really mold affected, I have my patients seal it off and get the pros.
Mm,
What we know about mold is that it gets very aggressive when you come after it.
yeah.
It will, we've known this from a Petri dish study that if you put a little bit of amphotericin B, which is an antifungal drug, on Aspergillus, it will increase its production of gliotoxin 10 to 20 times past what it normally would do.
Oh, it's
So I
unhappy.
always say that mold fights back.
Yeah.
Mold will fight back. So if you start getting after it and it's a deeper issue behind the wall and you're just seeing the surface thing, you're like, "Oh, I'll just clean this up." You might be sending the message to the stuff behind the wall that you can't get at.
Yeah.
We're under attack. Part of our colony just got taken out. Make mycotoxins.
Yeah.
So I don't want to disempower people like you can't take care of your own home, but do it wisely. So it's the
Yeah.
same thing with like if you're thinking, wow, I wonder if that area where our dog used to pee all the time is moldy under the carpet, and just go rip up the carpet because now you've taken old dried mold and you've broken it up into fragments, and one
Mm,
spore can break into 300 fragments. So
mm,
you've got a bigger problem.
yeah. Yeah.
So it's best if you are suspecting it, get good inspectors in to take a look and do it safely and
Yeah.
contain the area behind plastic.
Yes.
I mean, I can tell you story after story of even an inspector that comes in, and if they suspect, like we had in my own house, we had the bathroom above my kitchen was the flood area.
Hmm.
And so my inspector came in and she drilled a hole and we air sampled that cavity, which is the appropriate place to use an air sample.
Yes.
And, we're talking and we're talking and we both are like, oh man, I do not feel good. And the
Wow.
amount of toxins and spores that were coming through that little hole into my
Yeah.
kitchen were making both of us just from a drill hole. So she's
Wow.
like, we better get some duct tape over that or something. So I sealed it and then we, aired out the house and that kind of thing. But I was like, oh my gosh, you just literally, if you disturb it, it will get very aggressive. So just be really careful with that.
And especially if you are someone that is mold affected and feeling the symptoms, like you really don't want to be, nose up in the culprit, really. Like, I mean, just for your own health, like you don't want to be literally
Yes.
standing in the fire of what is making you sick. So I think that's just caution. Like, I think that's just like sensible caution that people need to hear. Because again, as much as we want to get in there and scrub it, they need to know that, you poked the hornet's nest and it's angry, and we need to be careful.
The masks, as we've said, in a good respirator, mycotoxins are coming through.
Yeah.
So pregnant people absolutely need to be out and away
Yeah.
because we see that these mycotoxins will concentrate in utero. So whatever babe mom is being exposed to, depending on the mycotoxin, baby is getting either 2 to 10 times as much as mom is getting. So,
Yeah.
we'll often see this as moms will be like, I'll just clean it up. It's no big deal. you know,
Yeah.
just don't. Just go ahead and let someone else take care of it.
Yeah.
Because even if you're wearing all the right things, you've got your eyes protected, you've got the Tyvek suit with the hat on, and you've got the respirator, and you've got the gloves and your shoes, even that, you're still getting the mycotoxins through that respirator.
Pregnant mums,
So
mums to be, yeah, like that is, I think that any mum would be like, all right, I'm out of there. No, not for me. And like you said, when there are people who are affected by mold and going back and in utero exposure was one of the risk factors. Again, that just makes more sense for mothers, expecting mothers, to not be in the area of cleaning.
yes.
Now, if somebody is, because I think if someone has to leave their home, or let's say like it is the basement, or it's a particularly like affected room that has mold and mycotoxin exposure, what items are affected by mold? Because I know people are just like, I'll just move from one house to another, take all my belongings with me. Talk about that.
I know this is the part where I make everybody sad. It's if
Yeah.
it is porous, it can take on spores, fragments, and toxins.
Mm,
So things that are glass and metal tend to be able to be cleaned up with surface cleaner. And I have a non-toxic surface cleaner handout that anyone can get off my website. It's in the footer and it's just a handout and it gives you all as long as you're not sensitive to essential oils. I love to use essential oils for cleaning.
yeah.
If you mix them with witch hazel, which has a natural drying
Yeah.
essence, it's almost like alcohol,
Yeah.
then you can basically surface wash those things. I tend to have patients do like surface wash it, get it out of the house. So if you can do a driveway clean, then when you get to the other side, give it one more because your car could have been contaminated or your
Yep.
moving van or whatever you're using. Give it one more wipe down before you bring it into the new space.
Yeah.
Some of my patients have had to do a triple. So they get it to a middle ground. They've had to clean it again, get it into a different vehicle to get it to the final place. But so glass and metal tends to be pretty easy
Yeah.
to take care of because it doesn't take those things on typically. But then when we get into things that are more porous, like if you have any kind of statues that are made out of clay or concrete or things like that,
Mm,
those are semi-porous, and so there's a potential for them to have taken on the spores.
mm,
Less so than something like a pillow or a
yeah.
mattress or upholstered furniture, which is when you sit down, you squish all the air out of it, and when you stand up, it goes
Yeah.
and comes back up, right? And are you going to get into every single one of those foam spore or foam cores or,
Yeah.
little
Little
air
hole.
bubbles?
Yep. Yep. No.
No,
Yeah.
that's not going to happen. So I did have a patient where budget was like no issue. So we did, and the family really they had heirloom furniture and they were like, we will do anything to save this heirloom furniture.
Yeah.
I learned a lot in that experience because I said, okay, I am only going to clear it if we can post test it and it's clean.
Yeah.
And about half of the even mahogany, which is a hard wood, about half of that furniture did not pass remediation. And we even
Mm,
did hydroxyl booths. They did a surface cleaning of it. They did whatever cleaning they would do with like their chemicals, and we spot tested everything because it's antique, blah, blah, blah.
yeah.
Then we put it in a hydroxyl booth. Then we put it in a ozone booth, and then we tested them. And about half of that furniture didn't even pass after all
Wow.
that.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, and it's a devastating thing, like you said, like that's heirloom furniture. And then obviously,
Yes.
not every person and most people can't refurnish their whole house, get a brand new, like, do some serious investing into their basically their whole life again. So it's not likely that you make these suggestions and that these precautions are taken. They're big conversations and sad conversations.
They are, and when we had mold, I mean, my books were my babies, so
Yeah.
that was a very hard one for me. It was just like, okay, they're paper. That's the easiest thing for mold to get, and that was very
Yeah.
hard. And
Yes.
I was also extremely reactive to even tiny things. And that's when I learned when, I had my own exposure. It's like, okay, I do have some attachments here,
Yeah.
and I'm not ready to handle this because I also have brain fog big time.
Yeah.
I'm going to put it all in bins. It's going to go in storage. And I sealed everything off because you can
Yep.
also take on mold in storage facilities. Put them in bins, sealed them off. Off they went. And I was like, when I'm better,
Yep.
I'll address this later. And
Yes.
that was a really smart thing to do because had I made that decision at the time, I would have had to get rid of a ton more than because I was so reactive. And then
Yes.
as my body got healthier, then I could basically pick up a book and just be like, yes or no, and I could kind of run
Yeah.
it under my nose, you know? Yeah. And now I live very peacefully with about half of my books, but you know,
That's a good tip
that's,
too.
yeah, just get you out of the environment,
Yeah.
get the stuff that you have attachments to that are porous out and give them a break from it too. And
Yeah.
in each of those bins, I put a little bit of essential oil on cotton balls
Yeah.
so that they were getting treated as
Yeah.
they were in storage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great tips. And obviously all of your website, everything's got all the tips and resources, but I love these tips now. So I know that this is going to be a question which we will never possibly answer in full today, which is how do we start treating mold illness in an individual? We've spoken about binders and detox and bile flow and immune support and all those types of things. And I guess even like where to begin when we start supporting individuals in the process? What do we start doing?
Well, other than get out of mold, that's
Yep.
number one.
Yep.
Half of the people when they get out of the exposure get better all
Hmm.
on their own without any treatment. And then we get to see the other half, which unfortunate souls that their bodies couldn't just do it on their own.
Yep.
So where I start with the basics. I mean, it sounds very boring and naturopathic, but there are nutrients that we know help set the stage for the body to be able to tolerate this better. So
Yep.
one of those is vitamin D.
Yep.
Um, Certain mycotoxins block your body's ability to take on vitamin D. Vitamin D runs our immune system. It's like the foreman on the immune system jobs.
Yep.
So if you're low in that, we could be giving you all the perfect stuff, antifungals or whatever on top, but if you're low in vitamin D, there's no foreman directing the wisdom of your immune system.
Yep.
So I start with basics like that. If you're going to be giving vitamin D, we want to be giving vitamin K so that
Yep.
the calcium that vitamin D causes to come in goes to the right places and you don't create more oxalate problems.
Yep.
And then DHA, that's another
Mm.
one that DHA will help start the oil change in the body. So these
Mm.
mycotoxins are very fat soluble, so they can get into the actual cell membranes and change how the cell functions. And that's that
Yep.
fatigue part.
Yep.
When we give DHA, it kind of acts like the resident in a dorm, It's kind of
Yep.
like, all right, you guys need to go to bed. You guys need to,
Yeah.
get your homework or whatever. It just is, it will go into that cell membrane as a structural component that just brings order and
Yep.
structure. And it also pushes out those mycotoxins back to the bloodstream. So it
Mm.
starts the detox process in the most gentle way.
Yep.
It's just like as one DHA goes into that cell membrane, a mycotoxin gets spit out. It's like a
Yep.
beautiful,
Yeah. There's a limited capacity, more
yeah,
DHA, less. Yeah. Makes
less
sense.
mycotoxin.
Yep.
And this is from animal studies. Many animal studies show that animals that had more DHA in their tissues could tolerate a much bigger mold exposure without any symptoms.
Mm.
So I'm like, that's an easy no-brainer.
Yeah.
because so many people can do DHA, and I know I'm detoxing them, but it's not, they're not getting like detox reactions from it, which is
Yes.
beautiful.
And like, because we're working
Yeah.
with some of the most sensitive people, so the slow, the steady, and also, like you said, the boring naturopathic stuff. It same goes for my gut patients. Like,
Yeah.
we don't jump to the hardcore protocols. We figure out the basics, and I think that's what people need to remember is that sometimes health is the boring stuff, which is great in one way because it's the stuff most of the time. It's stress management and fresh air, and obviously there's some specific things for mold, but the boring stuff is there for a reason. It tends to be the stuff that keeps us all healthy. And I guess, as you see patients, and I totally know that this is such a high touch point type of person that would need support because it's so individualized and it can be so complex. But I guess if it fits for that person who's not getting better outside of that environment, that's when appropriate, you could start looking at additional detoxes and binders and bile flow and immune stuff and things. But what you're saying is like getting out of the environment and adding in some basics or suggesting or I guess starting with basics can often be just a wonderful place to start.
Yeah, start with the basics because all of the rest of it, like if we're going to go on binders,
Yeah.
that is going to be pulling out our fats. And so if
Yeah.
you're already low on vitamin D, you're already low on vitamin A,
Yeah.
and we just put you on a binder, these are the people that come to me after having done binder protocols and they're sicker.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, now you're nutritional deficient
Yeah.
and mold sick.
Yeah.
So, and then there are certain so if you're going to be doing a detox protocol, there are certain cofactors and coenzymes
Mm.
that we know mold will deplete. And so if you're low on those, the detox pathway can only go this far and then it
Yeah.
gets stuck. And so then you get all the herx kind of stuff. So if we lay the foundation with the basics, and
Yeah.
that's one of the things I'm super passionate about now, is I've had so many doctors say, okay, make it easy on us.
Yeah.
What cofactors, what enzymes, what are you talking about? And so I'm now creating products so that it can just be like you do this for step one, you do this for step two, and precision protocols so that if we know your mycotoxins, we know what pathways we can maximize and take the pressure off these other ones.
Oh my God, I love that.
So that's like my new passion right now. I really want to create a product for late sensitivity
Yeah.
because that's an easy, it's a big life altering experience after mold, but
Yeah.
it's really simple to get the right nutrients in there. It's just like,
Ah,
there you go, you got your.
I love that. I'm looking forward to the day where all of these products are out and ready to go because that sounds like again much needed for professionals
Yes.
and patients and everything. Um, that would be a very cool project to get onto. I'm excited for you. So I end it with two questions. I always end it with what's something that someone who is mold affected or think that they're mold affected, what can they do today? And the last question is, from all of your experience, what is the number one tip for that you would give to someone? So what is a today tip? And I guess what is a number one tip?
An easy one, which we didn't all get to with the fundamentals, but the circadian rhythm thing, this kind of feeds into
Oh,
that.
talk
But
to it.
the
Yeah.
number one tip people can start today is spend more time outdoors,
Mm,
more fresh air.
I love
Not
that.
only are you going to get more fresh air, but you're going to get the wisdom of nature start to whisper in your ear.
Mm,
And that is the thing we see with mold is it starts to hijack how your brain works. It
yep.
makes you more sedentary and it tends to induce people to spend more time in their moldy environment rather than
Yes.
getting out, like a
Yep.
Jedi mind trick.
Yeah.
So I think, and if you're having struggles with that, if you're like, oh, you just nailed me,
Yeah.
that was me, then I did create a guided visualization for this. It's completely free.
Yep.
It's on my website. It's called the Clarity Pep Talk.
Hmm.
And I have found because I talk about mold all the time, if I'm not listening to that myself,
Mm.
about once a month, I will have a water event.
Whoa.
So yeah, mold is in, so mold can
Yeah.
get you
Yeah.
into coherence.
Yeah.
And so the easy tip is spend more time outdoors.
Yep.
And if you're having trouble with that, I have that guided visualization you can use.
Yeah, and we'll put all the links there. And so your number one tip for anyone who is suspects or knows that they're mold affected, what is it?
Trust yourself.
Yeah.
There is a lot of reconvincing, gaslighting, all of that. If you are the mold sick person, you may be the first person to be reacting to that environment. I can
Yeah.
promise you that everyone else will get sick eventually.
Yeah.
If they're male, it may not look like allergies. It might look like low testosterone. And
Yeah.
that's good. That's not going to get blamed on the environment. That's going to be like, oh, there's just something wrong with your testosterone, right?
Yes.
But trust yourself, trust yourself, trust yourself. Don't let anyone talk you out of it.
And I think that's probably the most perfect thing that we could end on. It's a big journey for anyone who is going through mold affected illness. So for them to hear that from you, that like trust in self and persistence in that trust and advocating for self is the most important thing. I mean, you know that it's the people that advocate and don't shut up and keep going that get better. And that's what we want for anyone that's affected by mold, is for them to get better. This has been an incredible podcast. I know anyone listening to this will just probably be blown away and have to listen to it again. Even though these were really, I guess, the beginning concepts, important, but like there is obviously so much to it. So if people want to learn more from you, where do they go? How do they connect? How do they keep exploring this area?
Yeah, thank you. So I have a website, drchrista.com. That's drcrista.com. I have a book that I did into audio because I remember how hard it was to read when I was mold sick. So
Yep.
if you're a listen to it person, or if you're in flux, if you're like staying at a hotel because your place is getting remediated, you can just do the audio book, or there's ebook. And then I've started to do monthly hyper-focused topic masterclasses for regular people who are struggling. So if there's a particular area where you're stuck or where you want to get more information, and that can be something like salicylate sensitivity, actinomycetes, antifungals is coming up soon. We just did a sinus reboot masterclass for all the nasal treatments. That's available. It's all done in regular person language. We have an interactive Q&A. It's just, they are super fun, and I love
Yeah.
to support people in that way. Keep an eye out for the masterclass.
That's great. And we'll put the details, we'll put the website in the show notes so people can just kind of scroll down, click, and take you to that. I'll also put, I know you're on Instagram as well because I follow you and I love your stuff. So I'll also put the link there as well, just so you have another couple of followers that I can also kind of listen to you on an almost daily basis, I'm sure. But
Almost.
yeah, I mean, you're doing all these other things. So, if you miss a day, totally fine. But Dr. Jill, this was so, so great. Thank you so much for sharing everything that you know. It was just such an awesome talk.
Great. Thank you. I hope it helps people.
I know it will. Thank you. Thanks for tuning into Gutsy Talks. I hope today's episode left you feeling inspired to take the next step in your gut health journey. If you're ready to dive deeper, head over to rachellarson.com.au. There's a range of courses and resources waiting for you. If you loved this episode, I'd be so grateful if you shared it with others who might benefit from this information. And so you don't miss out on future Gutsy Talks, be sure to hit follow and leave a review. I'd love to hear your feedback. I'm Rachel Larson, and I can't wait to connect with you again for our next Gutsy Talk.